The sky over Zarathia glowed with pale green light, a soft shimmer that reflected off the polished towers of the royal city. For centuries, Zarathians had considered themselves the wisest of all civilizations in the galaxy. They were tall, elegant beings with translucent skin that glowed faintly in the dark. Knowledge, logic, and control were their strengths. Chaos, they believed, was for others. But today, the city buzzed with an unfamiliar excitement. Word had spread. A human had arrived. Not just any human, but the human warrior, rumored across the stars for his courage, cleverness, and uncanny ability to survive situations no one else could. Princess Leora paced her room in the highest tower of the palace. Her pale eyes, flecked with violet, darted nervously around the room. She wore the ceremonial robes of her rank, though the usual calmness they brought her was gone. "Father," she whispered when the door opened, revealing King Tharion, "you must reconsider. Do not let him come to the council. Not the human warrior, please." King Tharion, regal and imposing, his translucent skin almost glowing in the light of the room, raised an eyebrow. "Leora," he said, his voice firm but patient. "This human is not here to fight us. He comes as an envoy, a diplomat. The council has agreed." "But father," Leora pleaded, her voice trembling, "I have heard the stories. He is unlike anything we have ever seen. He does not follow the rules as we do. He can make decisions without thinking of consequences. She stopped, realizing how absurd she sounded. "He?" King Tharion prompted gently. "Marcus," she whispered, as if saying his name aloud might summon him into the room. The king sighed, laying a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Leora, fear is natural, but sometimes wisdom grows from facing the unknown. If you are worried about him, then observe him. Do not hide from what you do not understand." Leora's heart raced. She wanted to argue, to beg, but the king's eyes, wise and steady, stopped her words. Outside in the palace courtyard, the human's ship descended slowly. Unlike the sleek, glowing Zarathian crafts, it was bulky, uneven, and slightly scarred from its journeys. The crowd of Zarathians whispered among themselves. Some were curious. Others, like Leora, were apprehensive. Captain Marcus stepped out. His human form was unremarkable at first glance. Average height, strong but not overly muscular, wearing a practical uniform. Yet something about him made people pause. His presence was calm but commanding. His eyes, sharp, curious, and strangely warm, scanned the palace and the crowd without arrogance. He bowed slightly, as if acknowledging the entire city at once, and began walking toward the palace entrance. His movements were careful, balanced, but confident. Princess Leora felt a chill run down her spine. "He is different," she muttered to herself. She had expected a warrior to look terrifying, maybe armored, maybe fierce, but he seemed human, ordinary, almost fragile, and yet somehow more alive than anyone she had seen. Inside the council chamber, preparations were underway. The Zarathian councilors, tall and elegant, arranged themselves in perfect symmetry. They whispered about human unpredictability, recalling tales from other planets where humans had changed the course of battles or solved problems that even the most logical aliens could not. King Tharion sat at the center of the semicircular table. Leora lingered near the entrance, her nerves barely contained. She could hear Marcus's footsteps echoing lightly as he approached. When Marcus entered, he gave a respectful nod to the king and council. "Honored councilors," he began, his voice steady, "I come in peace and with respect for your wisdom and your people. I hope we can find understanding between our worlds." His words were simple, but there was an unspoken weight to them. They carried confidence, respect, and clarity. The councilors exchanged uncertain glances. Some murmured approval. Others whispered doubt. A few eyes were wary. Princess Leora clenched her fists, feeling a mix of fear and fascination. "He is too calm," she thought. "Too sure of himself. How can one so small, face an empire like ours without hesitation?" King Tharion raised a hand. "We welcome Captain Marcus," he said. "Let him speak and we will listen." Marcus nodded, then began describing his mission. Humanity wanted to form an alliance, to share knowledge and to explore cooperation in areas of science, trade, and defense. He spoke not like a warrior demanding submission, but like a person seeking friendship. Yet even as he spoke, Princess Leora noticed the subtle way he observed the councilors. He seemed to notice their unspoken thoughts, their hidden doubts, even their fears. His questions were direct but not rude. He suggested solutions that seemed obvious to a human mind, yet revolutionary to Zarathians who relied solely on logic and tradition. It was unsettling. Later, as Marcus toured the palace, he encountered the daily life of Zarathians. He asked questions about their technology, their society, even their art. He was curious, not judgmental. Leora followed him silently, watching him interact with servants, scholars, and guards. Every action was deliberate, every word measured. Then came the incident. A small energy core in the palace malfunctioned unexpectedly. Alarms blared and Zarathians froze, unsure how to handle it. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation. He analyzed the problem quickly, spoke instructions calmly to the guards, and climbed into the energy chamber himself. Within moments, he had stabilized the core, preventing a potentially catastrophic explosion. The crowd of onlookers gasped. The counselors exchanged stunned glances. Princess Leora's heart raced. She had been terrified that the human warrior would bring chaos. Yet here he had prevented disaster with courage, intelligence, and a calm, steady hand. When he emerged, dust and sparks clinging to his uniform, he simply smiled and said, "All safe. Just a little adjustment was needed." Leora felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. How can one human be so capable? She whispered to herself. King Tharion approached her, his expression unreadable. "Do you see my daughter?" he said quietly. "Humans are different, yes, but different does not mean dangerous. Sometimes it means extraordinary." Leora did not answer. She only watched Marcus, wondering how someone so small, so fragile in appearance, could carry the courage and skill of a true warrior. And something more, something her people lacked. The ability to act unpredictably, creatively and with empathy. That night, as the palace slept, Leora stood by her window, looking at the human envoy walking alone in the moonlit gardens. She whispered to herself almost as a confession, "Not the human warrior. Yet somehow, he may be what we need." And somewhere deep in her heart, fear mingled with curiosity, and a quiet spark of respect began to grow. The next morning, the palace buzzed with activity. Princess Leora could not shake the image of Marcus walking through the gardens the night before, calm and confident, handling problems with ease. Her curiosity was mingled with fear. She had always believed humans to be impulsive, reckless, and unpredictable, but Marcus did not seem reckless. He seemed precise. "Father," she said as she entered the throne room, "I need to understand him. How can one human think so differently from us?" King Tharion looked up from his tablet, his translucent skin glowing faintly under the room's light. "Leora," he said gently, "you will understand only if you observe. Humans are strange, yes, but they are not limited by the same rules we follow. They do not rely solely on logic. They use something we often overlook, creativity and intuition." Before Leora could respond, a messenger arrived. "Princess, Captain Marcus requests an audience with you," he said. Leora's heart skipped a beat. She had not expected a private meeting so soon. "Very well," she said, trying to steady her voice. Marcus was waiting in the garden when she arrived. The morning sun reflected off the dew on the grass, making the air shimmer. He smiled when he saw her. "Princess Leora," he said politely. "May I walk with you?" She nodded. The two walked slowly along the marble pathways, surrounded by alien flora that glowed faintly in the morning light. "I hope I'm not imposing," Marcus said. "I want to understand your people better." "Understanding prevents mistakes." Leora's brow furrowed. "Mistakes? Do you think we would make mistakes?" He shook his head. "Not intentionally. But sometimes rules and traditions can blind even the wisest. I believe every culture has strengths and weaknesses. My goal is to learn, not to judge." Leora was taken aback. His words were honest, simple, and yet powerful. Most humans would not care about the traditions of other species, she admitted. They would see differences and assume danger or weakness. Marcus shrugged lightly. "Maybe, but not all humans. Some of us have learned that survival sometimes depends on learning from others, not just overpowering them." For a moment, Leora did not speak. She realized that Marcus saw the world differently. Where Zarathians relied on strict logic, humans relied on flexibility. Where they valued control, humans valued adaptability. Later that day, the palace faced a minor crisis. A transporter malfunction trapped a group of young Zarathian scholars inside a small chamber. The door refused to open, and the counselors debated endlessly on the correct procedure. Leora watched from the hallway, frustrated. "They are wasting time," she whispered. Marcus appeared beside her. "May I try something?" he asked. "Of course," Leora said hesitantly. He stepped forward and examined the transporter controls, his fingers moving over the alien symbols with careful curiosity. Unlike the counselors, he did not follow the manual blindelen. For many days the sky above Zarathia remained calm, but Princess Leora felt a growing unease in her heart. Rumors whispered through the palace halls. The Varkhan Dominion was preparing an attack. They had watched the human envoy arrive and feared an alliance between Zarathia and Earth. Now, they were moving their warships closer, hiding them in the dark between the stars. King Tharion called his council together. "Our sensors confirm Varkhan ships approaching," he said. "They are cloaked, but we know they are there." "We must prepare," the council murmured nervously. They had powerful technology and strong shields, but they lacked one thing: flexibility. Their defenses were designed for predictable attacks. The Varkhans, however, were unpredictable and ruthless. Marcus stood at the edge of the council chamber. He had been quietly listening, watching their careful plans unfold on glowing displays. After a while, he stepped forward. "Your shields and weapons are impressive," Marcus said calmly, "but the Varkhans will expect you to use them exactly as you always have." "We must surprise them." "Surprise them?" one counselor asked, frowning. "We are not warriors of chaos," Marcus met his eyes. "Sometimes chaos is the only shield against destruction. I can help you, but you must trust me." Leora watched her father. The king's face was serious but thoughtful. Finally, Tharion nodded. "Show us, human." The plan Marcus spent hours in the strategy chamber studying Zarathian defenses. He asked for maps of the city, lists of ships, energy grids, and supply tunnels. He worked with engineers and guards, rearranging units and shields in ways the Zarathians had never considered. Leora hovered nearby, watching him think. He moved between screens with quick precision, drawing lines, shifting icons. He was not guessing. He was creating patterns, traps, and escape routes always several steps ahead. "You are making our defenses uneven," a guard said, confused. Marcus smiled faintly. "Exactly. Uneven means unpredictable. They will not know where to strike." When Marcus finished, the holographic map of Zarathia looked strange to Zarathian eyes. Shields shifted, power routed in odd loops, corridors sealed, others opened. Yet it formed a hidden net of traps and counterattacks. Leora finally asked, "How do you know this will work?" "I don't," Marcus said simply. "But if we follow your usual plan, I know it will fail. This way gives us a chance." His honesty startled her. No Zarathian leader would admit uncertainty aloud. Yet he did, and still looked calm. The first strike at dawn, the Varkhan fleet appeared on sensors. Massive, spiked ships with dark hulls emerged from the void like predatory beasts. Their weapons lit the blackness, hurling plasma towards Zarathia's shields. The palace shook. Alarm sirens wailed. Guards rushed to their posts. Leora stood beside her father in the command center. The walls trembled under the impact. She glanced at Marcus. He stood with his arms folded, eyes on the tactical display. "Wait," Marcus said quietly. "Let them think we are panicking." He timed the shield's rotations, opening small gaps just long enough to lure the enemy into firing where it seemed weak, then snapping them closed, reflecting their shots back at them. Explosions blossomed across the sky as Varkhan missiles struck empty space or even their own ships. The counselors gasped. "It's working," one cried. Marcus shook his head. That was only their first strike. They will adapt. On the ground hours later, Varkhan's strike teams slipped past the outer defenses, landing in the industrial zones below the palace. They brought weapons designed to shut down power grids and sow panic among civilians. Marcus immediately volunteered to lead a counter-team. "You need someone who can think on the ground," he told Tharion. Leora's heart jumped. "You cannot go. You are our envoy. I am also your ally," Marcus said firmly. "And your people need help." King Tharion looked at his daughter. For a moment, Leora thought he would forbid it. But then he nodded. "Go, Captain Marcus. Princess Leora, guide him. You know the tunnels." Leora's eyes widened. "Father, me?" "Yes. You know these passages better than any soldier. Go." She swallowed hard but straightened. Very well. Into the tunnels. The two moved quickly through hidden corridors beneath the city, their path lit by dim blue lights. Leora wore a lightweight shield suit, her heart pounding. Marcus carried a compact Zarathian weapon adapted for human hands. "Why do you do this?" she asked as they ran. "You could stay safe in the palace." Marcus glanced at her, his face calm even in the dim light. "Because safety means nothing if the people fall. Leadership means standing with those who need you." His words sent a strange warmth through her chest. She had been raised to think of rulers as separate from the masses. Marcus showed her another way. They reached a service hatch and peered out into the industrial zone. Smoke filled the air. Varkon soldiers, tall, armored creatures with glowing visors, moved through the streets, planting disruption devices. Civilians huddled in doorways. Marcus whispered, "We'll move in small bursts. Hit their disruptors first, confuse them, then guide civilians to safety." The counter-move working together, Marcus and Leora led a small team of Zarathian guards. Marcus directed their moves like a chess master. He used the city's layout, alleys, vents, magnetic lifts to outmaneuver the Varkons. His unorthodox tactics made the enemy stumble and scatter. Leora was amazed at how he could improvise. Where Zarathians relied on preset orders, Marcus adapted every second, turning problems into opportunities. Twice he saved Leora by pulling her behind cover a heartbeat before enemy fire struck. At one point, a group of civilians became trapped under a collapsing walkway. Leora hesitated, calculating the safest route. Marcus acted immediately, leaping forward to lift the fallen beam with the help of a guard, pulling the frightened Zarathians to safety. His uniform tore, but he only grinned. "We're still alive. Keep moving." Leora felt her fear shift into admiration. This was not just strategy. This was courage lived moment by moment. The turning of the battle after hours of fighting and sabotage, Marcus and Leora reached the main disruption node the Varkons had planted. If it stayed active, the city's shields would collapse in minutes. Marcus examined the device. Its design was alien, complex, and dangerous. "We don't have time to dismantle it safely," Marcus said. "We'll overload it. That could destroy this whole sector," Leora cried. "Unless I vent the energy first," he said. "But I'll need your help." Together they rewired the node, Marcus guiding Leora's hands through alien symbols and wires. Her fingers shook, but his voice stayed calm. "Blue to green. Now disconnect the third strand. Good, you're doing great." The device began to whine and flash. Marcus pulled her back just as it exploded harmlessly upward, releasing its energy into the sky. The city's shields stabilized. Enemy ships found themselves trapped between overlapping defense fields, and Zarathian forces struck back. The tide turned. Aftermath hours later, the surviving Varkon ships retreated, vanishing into the void. Zarathia's skies cleared, though fires still burned in the lower sectors. Exhausted, Leora and Marcus returned to the palace. The guards saluted them as heroes. King Tharion met them at the entrance, his expression unreadable until he placed his hands on their shoulders. "You have saved our city," he said softly. "Both of you," Marcus shook his head. "Your people saved themselves. I only showed them a different path." But Leora could see the truth. Without his plan, without his daring, Zarathia would have fallen. She looked at Marcus and saw not only a warrior but a teacher, a friend, and a mirror showing her own people what they could become. A new respect that night. As the stars shimmered beyond the palace walls, Leora found Marcus on the balcony, gazing at the horizon. He looked tired but peaceful. "You could have died today," she said quietly. "So could you," he replied. "But we didn't." Leora stood beside him. "I was wrong about you. I thought you were dangerous because you were unpredictable. But today I saw that unpredictability can save lives." Marcus glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "And I saw your courage. You guided me through those tunnels and you never gave up. Maybe we're not so different." For the first time, Leora smiled at him without hesitation. "Not so different," she echoed. They stood together in silence, two figures from different worlds bound now by shared struggle. The siege of Zarathia had ended, but something new had begun, a fragile trust, and a recognition of the strength that came from blending logic with courage, tradition with creativity, and alien with human. The palace of Zarathia glittered under the twin suns, but inside its walls a quiet unease spread. The arrival of Marcus, the human warrior, had changed everything. Some Zarathians admired his courage while others whispered warnings. Princess Leora still felt torn. She had seen Marcus save lives and repair systems, but she still feared his unpredictable nature. Each evening, the council met to discuss a growing problem. Long-range scanners had detected unusual energy signals beyond the edge of their star system, patterns unlike any normal ship movement. Some suspected pirates. Others feared the Varkon Dominion, their old enemy. Leora watched her father pace the council chamber. "We must know the truth," King Therion said. "We cannot afford to be blind." One advisor cleared his throat. "Sire, let the human investigate." "He seems eager for action." Leora frowned. "He is not our tool to be used." Marcus, sitting at the edge of the room, raised his hand slightly. "If you need me to go, I will. But I suggest we go together. Zerathians and humans. Trust is built by standing side by side. Key." The warships had left Zerethia's orbit. Fires in the lower city had been put out, and the smell of burned metal slowly faded from the streets. Yet the palace still trembled with tension. No one could forget how close the Varkon Dominion had come to victory. Princess Leora walked through the great hall with slow steps. She had not slept since the battle. Images of Marcus pulling civilians to safety and guiding the guards through chaos still filled her mind. She had always believed humans to be reckless, but she had seen him risk himself again and again for strangers. King Therion called an emergency meeting of the council. All the leaders gathered around the long crystal table, their translucent skin glowing faintly under the high ceiling lights. Marcus stood at the end of the room, quiet but alert. "Zerathia stands because of our new ally," the king began. "Yet our society is divided. Some of us still fear the human. Some admire him. We must decide what comes next," the councillors murmured. One elder said, "His plans saved us, yes, but his methods were strange. We do not know what he might do if he disagrees with us." Another spoke, "He risked his life for our people. That is not the act of an enemy." Leora watched Marcus carefully. He did not interrupt. He let their words pass like wind around a rock. Finally, when the king gestured to him, Marcus stepped forward. "I came as a diplomat," Marcus said, "not as a conqueror. But yesterday we fought side by side. We won because we trusted each other, because we combined your technology with my strategies. That is the future I believe in." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have great wisdom and science. Humans have creativity and adaptability. Together we can build something stronger than either of us alone." Leora felt a quiet pride at his words. They were simple, but they carried a truth the council could not deny. Walking among the people, the days after the battle, Marcus did not stay in the palace. Instead, he walked through the city's damaged streets. He spoke with engineers repairing the power lines, comforted families who had lost homes, and praised the courage of the guards. Princess Leora joined him. She had grown up far above these streets, seeing them only from windows. Now, walking beside Marcus, she saw her people differently. She saw their fear, their resilience, and their gratitude. Many bowed when they saw the princess, but their eyes went to Marcus, the human who had fought for them. At one burned-out plaza, a child ran to Marcus and handed him a small crystal toy. "For saving us," the child said shyly. Marcus knelt, smiled, and thanked the child in the Zerathian language. Leora's heart softened. "You understand them," she said as they walked on. "You do not speak our language perfectly, but you understand them." Marcus glanced at her. "I listen. Listening is more important than words." Leora thought about her own people, about how rarely the nobles listened to the workers. She wondered if perhaps humans were not the only ones who needed to change. A new proposal back in the palace. Marcus requested a private meeting with King Therion and Princess Leora. He laid a simple proposal on the table, a joint council between humans and Zerathians to plan defense. Science and trade together. "It will not be easy," Marcus admitted. "Old habits run deep. But if we do nothing, the Varkons will return stronger. And there will be other threats." King Therion studied him. "You suggest we give humans influence over our policies?" Marcus shook his head. "Not influence, partnership. You keep your sovereignty. We share knowledge, ideas, and training. Each learns from the other." Leora watched her father carefully. She could see the conflict on his face. The king had spent his life believing Zerathia superior to all others. Yet he had seen Marcus save his people with unorthodox methods. "I will consider it," the king said slowly. "But our council fears what it does not control." Marcus nodded. Then let me show them why partnership is strength. Training the Guardians, Marcus began working with the palace guards, teaching them small but powerful changes in tactics, how to move in smaller units, how to use terrain creatively, how to improvise when plans failed. At first, the guards resisted. Their tradition valued symmetry and precision. But when Marcus led them through exercises, they saw how flexibility could outsmart stronger foes. Soon they began to adapt, mixing their disciplined training with his human unpredictability. Leora joined some of the sessions. She practiced with the guards, learning to think in new ways. Marcus treated her not as a princess, but as an equal trainee. She found it strange, then refreshing. One afternoon after training, she asked him, "Why do you teach us?" "You could keep your methods secret," Marcus smiled. "Because if only I know, nothing changes. If all of you know, you can defend yourselves even without me." Leora was silent. In Zarathian politics, knowledge was power. But Marcus shared knowledge freely. That was his power. The Festival of Lights, as the city slowly healed, a festival was held to honor the survivors and mourn the lost. Lanterns of glowing crystal floated into the sky, forming rivers of color above the towers. Leora and Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the scene. Music drifted upward, soft and mournful, but also full of hope. "Your people are beautiful," Marcus said quietly. "They endured the siege, and still they create beauty." "They are strong," Leora replied. "Stronger than I realized." She glanced at him. "You helped them see that." Marcus shook his head. "They already had it. I just reminded them." For the first time, Leora allowed herself to smile openly at him. "You are unlike any being I have ever met, Marcus." He looked at her, his expression warm but serious. "And you are braver than you think, Princess. You walked into danger with me when you could have stayed safe. Remember that." The council shifts, the joint training, the public gratitude, and the festival slowly shifted the council's opinion. They saw Marcus not as a threat but as a bridge. King Tharion sensed the change and called another meeting. "We have seen what partnership can do," the king said. "Let us make it official." The council voted, narrowly at first, then decisively, to accept Marcus's proposal for a joint council with humanity. For the first time in Zarathian history, they would share power with another species voluntarily. Leora felt her chest fill with quiet pride. She had pleaded against the human warrior weeks ago. Now she stood beside him as her father announced a new era. A private moment, that evening after the vote, Leora found Marcus on the palace balcony again. The twin moons shone above, casting pale light over his face. "When you arrived, I begged my father not to allow you into our council," she said softly. "I thought you were dangerous. But now—" She hesitated. "Now I see you are something else entirely." Marcus leaned on the railing. "Fear is normal, but you faced it. That's what matters." She looked at him. "Why do you keep risking yourself? You could return to Earth now, a hero." Marcus's eyes searched the sky. "Because this isn't about me. It's about what comes next. If Zarathia and Earth stand together, the galaxy changes. And if we fail, we both fall." Leora stood beside him. "Then we will not fail." The turning point, the next morning, King Tharion and Marcus stood before a vast assembly of citizens. Together they announced the formation of the Alliance Council, a body where humans and Zarathians would plan their future side by side. Applause rose from the crowd, echoing off the palace walls. For the first time, Princess Leora saw her people look at Marcus not with fear but with hope. She realized the turning point had come, not just for her world, but for herself. She looked at Marcus and saw not only a warrior and diplomat, but also a partner in shaping the future. Humans were no longer strangers. They were allies, teachers, and perhaps even friends. And as the crowd cheered, Leora felt the last of her old fear fade away. In its place stood something stronger: trust. The new Alliance Council had been formed only a few weeks when the first true test arrived. Far beyond Zarathia's twin moons, a deep space probe sent a warning. The Varkon Dominion was returning. This time they were not sending a single fleet but 3, converging from different sectors. Inside the council chamber, tension pulsed like an electric current. Zarathian leaders spoke in calm but tight voices, while the human representatives sent urgent data streams. Everyone knew this would be the greatest challenge yet. Marcus stood at the round table, studying the holographic display of the incoming fleets. Princess Leora sat beside her father, her eyes fixed on the glowing shapes. "They're faster than last time," one Zarathian commander said. "Our long-range cannons will only slow them, not stop them." Another added, "Our shields will hold, but not for long. If they breach the capital, the whole alliance could crumble." All eyes turned to Marcus. He had become their strategist, their outsider who thought differently. "What do you suggest?" King Therion asked. Marcus looked at the hologram again. "We can't defeat them head-on, but we can make them defeat themselves." The room went silent. "A risky plan," Marcus explained his idea slowly, using simple maps and gestures so even the most traditional counselors could follow. "The Varkan fleets are strong but rigid. They rely on synchronized attacks. If we break their rhythm, they will become vulnerable." He proposed using a combined force of human strike teams and Zarathian stealth ships to lure the enemy into a narrow corridor between two pulsar systems. Once inside, gravity and radiation would disrupt the Varkan's sensors, forcing them to split formation. "Once their formation is broken," Marcus said, "our main fleet strikes from hidden positions. We cut off their